Hello, health enthusiasts, and welcome to Rev Up Health, your go-to podcast for all things wellness. I'm Dr. Mark Hechler.
And I'm Tandi Hechler. Together, we're here to fuel your health journey with the best of functional medicine and holistic well-being.
Each episode will dive deep into topics that matter to your health, bringing you the latest insights, research, and inspiring stories.
So whether you're on a quest for vibrant health or just looking for daily health tips, we've got you covered.
So let's embark on this journey together and transform the way you live.
Hello, and welcome to Rev Up Health podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about a recent trip we got to take to a regenerative farm in California.
Yeah, it's a really awesome place. If anybody's ever seen The Biggest Little Farm, it's a documentary that's on Netflix. I believe it's on some other channels too. But anyway, it's quite an interesting documentary that you'll have to try and see if you can find that. It's certainly something that, it puts a lot of perspective into how we grow and how we raise our foods and how we treat our soil and the air and all the animals involved with it, actually.
Yeah. So there's actually a couple of different documentaries that you can catch right now on Netflix for free. You can catch Kiss the Ground, which is another documentary regarding regenerative farming. And I believe you can rent or purchase The Biggest Little Farm. Mark and I have watched this twice, both times on international flights.
Right. Yeah. So it's good to have something to look at whenever you're on a long flight like that. But it's certainly very interesting. It gathers your interest. And it's actually got a plot to it. So it's not just about farming, if you will. So it's quite an interesting movie. So I won't give it away.
Right. But if you were we were recently in LA visiting our daughter and son-in-law and looked it up and found that you could go for a tour, and they have a farm stand there where you can buy great food and
the products that they have there, they grow there. So they grow a lot of those items that they have in their farm stand, and it's quite good too, might add.
Yes. And we were lucky enough that John and Molly Chester surprised our group with a little quick Q&A afterwards. So we got to meet them in person. We purchased a cookbook. It's the Apricot Lanes Farm Cookbook by Molly Chester. It is huge and has amazing recipes in it. So excited to try those. But that was an extra special treat from our visit there on the farm.
No pun intended. They're really down to earth.
Yes.
They're good people.
They really are.
A lot of folks wouldn't take the time like they did to meet everybody and answer questions and explain a lot of things. So, and there's a lot of stuff also still to come from them. So they gave us a little hint that there may be some more things in the works. So we won't give it away.
But ultimately, why is regenerative farming important for our health? And I think that's something that is really important to talk about so that we understand,
Right. It's basically, regenerative farming is just a way of creating biodiversity in farming. And it affects everything from the soil to the crops to the animals to the air that we breathe. So it's just a way that things can symbiotically coexist and benefit each other. So, whether it's the birds eating the bugs, preventing the bugs from getting into the plants and things like that. So there's a lot of things that happen, and there's a lot more diversity that occurs in these types of regenerative farms than a traditional modern farm. So
yes, and because of that biodiversity, what they're doing is regenerating the soil that the food is grown in. And so what that means is that then the food that you're eating from these farms is more nutrient dense, which is why it's such an important thing.
Yeah. So not only just the nutrients, but even the moisture in the soil too. So, they talk about that, these regenerative farms can, basically recoup 50% of the moisture that comes down into the ground versus the traditional today's farms will lose a lot of moisture. So
right. So no till. Regenerative farms don't till the soil. They have lots of cover crop. They integrate livestock into their farms. So by moving your chickens from one area to another, you can get that soil, turned. And
one thing I noticed too, that I don't know that maybe I've even spoken about it, but one thing I noticed is that they had animals. They have animals that have different types and different breeds. For instance, they had sheep, and there's goats and there's pigs and there's a lot of different types of animals that actually, that actually utilize the grasses and the weeds and the bushes and things that may grow there. And so I never noticed that there was anybody mowing any grass there, actually, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, you've got all the natural animals doing all the mowing for you. And then, their feces basically fertilize that soil, and then they just rotate them. So it's certainly interesting to see how they do that.
Yes, it really is. Also, with this type of farming, there is less of a need for pesticides and anything like that. And in fact, most of these, if you are a regenerative farm, you're not using pesticides and herbicides.
Yeah, pesticides, herbicides, it just eliminates that significantly. I mean, yes, you're going to have weeds growing around there, but it's not something that can't be controlled. For instance, the chickens and the other animals can control those weeds in some respects. And they even had, they had chicken coops and chicken runs set up even out in their orchards, that would help to basically regenerate the soil and take care of the grasses and bugs, and they would just move them around. So that kind of eliminates that need for the herbicides and the pesticides that you typically see. And so that you can literally pick fruit off of the tree and eat it because it does not have chemicals.
Yeah. And the other really fun thing about this farm is the different species that they have. So, they may have 4 different species of peach trees, or, different trees, they would have several different species. And they do this because then your food system is more resilient. And so if you have one that might be a little less drought tolerant, if you don't have a big production that year, you're going to get production from another.
Right. Yeah. So it's not, everything doesn't just revolve around the weather. There's going to be good and bad times with the weather. And so different crops will basically generate more produce at certain times of the year, whether it be moisture or whether it be dryness.
So what it means to consume foods that are more nutrient dense is that your body is being fueled in a much more efficient, healthy way.
Right. More of the things that you need, more of the fuel you need for all of your daily activities and exercises and metabolic function, you're going to get more of them. And then also you're not going to have as much of a problem or threat with contaminated products in foods. So less toxins, less chemicals and things like that. So these types of chemicals and toxins can be kind of toxic to your cells. And yes, it also affects your mitochondrial health. It affects your thyroid. It affects other hormones in your system. So those toxins, those chemicals are endocrine disrupting chemical binding receptor problems. And so this allows you to basically have a healthier system, metabolic system.
Right. And so we're not also just talking about physical health. We're talking about emotional health and mental health.
Absolutely.
In general, your health overall. One of the things that's quite interesting is that when you look to eat in this way, quite often you have to go to a farmer's market or seek it out and actually talk to the farmer. And, that helps your community health as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's even going to, when you want to carry it on down a little further, economic benefits from it too. So, we're talking about there's more health, less chronic disease. And so that helps to reduce the overall healthcare burden too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But one of the big things as we're talking economics is that right now, these regenerative farms are more costly because it's not what we're used to having. And the regenerative farms aren't as subsidized as other farms that raise monocrops.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. There's a lot of issues with policies and that go along with the subsidies for farming. And with that, with regenerative farms, I think you find out that you find ways to get to the final product. And when it's done in a healthy manner, it's going to be healthier for you overall too.
And the other piece is, once you take the plunge and start a regenerative farm, 5 to 7 years down the line, you're in a much better place.
Yeah. Right.
But that initial startup cost is a little bit more taxing.
It takes a while. It takes years to get a regenerative farm up and running. It's not something that just happens in a year or two. It can take multiple years. I think they mentioned 7 years for that biggest little farm. I think they suggested it took about 7 years before it would see itself being able to sustain itself and be viable.
Right. And now it is thriving. Not that it doesn't still take a lot of work. The way that they graze their animals and rotate their crops, even as they were explaining it is extremely thoughtful and fascinating. Mm-hmm. So the best thing that we can do to kind of help regenerative farming and the movement is to buy food from regenerative farms.
Yeah, buy
local food. And, we haven't really even talked about what this does for our environment.
Right. Yeah. I was noticing that, doing some of the research, they talked about, how these regenerative farms can actually be carbon eaters, if you will. So they produce 50% less carbon, which gets into the atmosphere, which, affects climate change, whereas some of the traditional farming can actually release carbon. So it's, these farms, these regenerative farms are actually beneficial to the environment, to the air, specifically. So it's not just all about food. It's all about the air too.
Right. And water. Right. We were in California, where water is a big deal. And one of the things that we talked about when we were doing the question and answer is, when you farm in a regenerative way and you've got cover crop and the soil is,
it's like a sponge.
Yes, it's like a sponge. So when it rains, and it may not rain very often, but when it does rain, all of that water is being collected in the soil, which is exactly what you want. And so one of the things that they were very proud of is that they have not used their water allotment since they opened the farm, which is a great thing for water, especially in an area where water is so precious.
Mm-hmm. And they talked about their aqueduct actually increasing this level of water, in the ground. So it's certainly something that does show, that you can, sequester water. And some of these areas out there in California, they get water at certain times of the year, and the rest of the year doesn't get anything. So, it's nice to be able to know that you can actually do that and kind of bank your water, if you will. So, and I know they had some runoff areas too, but that would basically contain any moisture that may get in heavy rain periods. So then you can reuse that. But it's also something that they kind of generate their own compost even out there, which is quite really awesome. They have separate composting facilities out there to just generate soil that they can use to grow the crops and put into the gardens and what have you.
Yeah. So they talked about both hot compost and cool compost. They have a whole barn dedicated to a bed of worms that they feed, and then take that and make a tea that they water their crops with. It's just amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, hundreds of thousands of worms they had in this thing that were just in there, just eating away and loving it. So,
yes. So ultimately, I think that the topic of regenerative farming is so important for so many reasons. When we're talking about preventative medicine, we're trying to help people live fuller, longer lives. And So to think about regenerative farming where we can also keep our earth healthy.
Right.
And
it all starts with the soil. I mean, literally all starts with the soil. The more healthier soil we have, the better the plants grow. The animals don't pick up the pesticides, and it doesn't affect us when we do consume these products. So it does make everything healthier from head to toe for us. And, gut health is pretty important, as we've talked about in other podcasts. So it makes a difference.
Yes, it really does. So definitely encourage you to check out regenerative farms around locally, wherever you are. And there are a few in Kansas City here too. Vera Family Farm, 5 Mile Farm, Herbivore Urban Farm, lots of different places that you can go look. A lot of these farms, you can, look at their website. It will tell you what farmers markets you can find them at. You can sign up for a CSA where they basically provide you product every week that's fresh and from the farm. And, we're kind of trying to experiment with that a little bit here at Revelation Health. We've got some chickens, we've got some honeybees.
We're trying to do our own part.
Our garden got started late this year, but we're hoping that by next year we have that going a little bit more.
Well, at least the chickens will enjoy the garden.
That's right.
We won't. They will.
So encourage you to kind of think about what you're eating and where it comes from and how it's grown. And next time you're at the farmer's market, you can ask some questions.
Yeah.
So the farmers can help you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, but check it out. Check out The Biggest Little Farm. I think you'll enjoy that documentary. John and Molly did a great job on that, and you really appreciate it. So, but otherwise, we hope you have a healthy day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rev Up Health. We hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to supercharge your health journey.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe to Rev Up Health wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review.
Have a topic you want us to explore? Reach out to us on social media channels. We love hearing from our wellness community.
Until next time, keep thriving, and remember, your journey to health is a journey to a better you.
Stay well, and we'll connect with you again soon. This is Tandi.
And this is Dr. Mark, signing off from Rev Up Health. Take care.
The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. The content is designed to support, not replace, the relationship that exists between a patient and their healthcare provider. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your healthcare regimen, including diet, exercise, or treatment plans. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Revelation Health and Wellbeing.